Hey everyone, so today I am going to share with you how I curl doll hair. Today I'm going to be curling my Girl of the Year 2010 Lainey. Lainey's already had her bath, that's why she's wet. So that's something really important that you want to do is you want to make sure that your doll is already cleaned. If they need their body washed, do that. If they need their hair washed, even if they don't, I recommend just wash it, condition it, detangle it, and if their hair is frizzy in any way or poofy in any way, make sure you boil wash the hair straight or flat iron it straight, because you want the hair to be in the best condition before you curl it. It's kind of like if you were going to curl your own hair, you wouldn't wake up with a bed head and try to put curls in it, because it's not going to have the best results. So do whatever you need to do first. I have tutorials on cleaning and detangling hair, on boil washing, on flat ironing. Now, you don't need to know the type of hair your doll has, but it does kind of help. So if you want to know how to distinguish the hair types, I have a video on that. I'll put it in the arty cards and on the description to help you out. So Lainey has human grade Kineclon hair, which is used on synthetic wigs for people. So this is a sort of tricky fiber to work with just because it's very temperamental. But I have curled this type of hair before. Now the cool thing about American Girl hair is you can wet set it. You don't have to use hot water, but if you're looking for a more like permanent curl, then this is the way to go. So I want Lainey's curls to hold. Now of course I can take them out and just boil wash her again and they'll go straight, because that's what happens with human grade Kineclon hair. But rather than just wet setting it and over time it kind of falling out, this will stay longer term. For instance, I boil washed some curls in my Samantha doll's hair probably 5 years ago, and they're still in, they're still, you know, bouncy and stuff. You can also do different techniques to get wavy hair. So you can do things like braid the hair and boil wash it to get kind of beachy waves. You don't have to do it the way I'm doing it, but if you want kind of more like, you know, ringlets or defined like whooshy hair, this is how I recommend. So you will need your doll, a rat tail comb, so one that has a pick. This is going to be really helpful for sectioning. I definitely recommend having it. A towel. Now this is for the finishing. This is a color bottle I have that has a few squirts of gel, and I diluted it in warm water and shook it up really good. You can use any gel. People ask me this all the time. I literally buy the cheapest brand from Walmart, but I get the max hold, so like the top strength, because I'm diluting it. And this is going to add some shine and hold without making the hair crunchy. I don't like crunchy doll hair. If you like crunchy doll hair, feel free to slather a bunch of gel or hairspray on them. You're going to need some kind of curlers. Now I have a bunch of perm rods from cosmetology school. I also have, in a different thing, classic like rollers for doing roller sets, but I'm going to use these perm rods, they're easier. End papers, you can get them at places like Sally's, or you can use really thin tissue paper to kind of mimic your own if you don't have access to these. And I really recommend using end wraps, because what it does is when you get to the ends of the hair and you go to wrap it around, if you don't have these, you're going to get all those little like stray bits of hair popping out, and your curls or your waves aren't going to look as nice without end wraps to keep everything in place. And you're going to need some kinds of clips for sectioning, and if you're going to be boil washing your doll to set the waves, then you definitely want to have a bowl with some water. Now, as I said, I literally just washed Lainey. I recommend that you curl on wet or damp hair, because it's a lot easier to work with, especially for the fussier hair types like human grade Kineclon, or as I call it, Barbie grade Kineclon, which is the other type. Hi, editing Shelly here. So unfortunately I don't have a viewfinder on my camera that flips out, so I thought I had the camera angled in a spot where you could see it. So this is future Lainey after her hair is curled. It's not done. I'm going to explain to you what I mean about sectioning. So if you're doing corkscrew curls like what Cecile has, you're going to want to go horizontally like this, up the shaft. You're going to want to follow the rows of the wefts, maybe do like 2 at a time. But Lainey, we want like bigger waves, not tiny little ringlets. So the way I sectioned her was vertically. So I did sections like this, and then I split them in two. You can really see here So they are larger sections, and the reason why I also did it vertically was because I really wanted to make sure her face was framed right. So I wanted to think about how they were going to fall over like the head this way, as opposed to making sure that they were all going around the head this way. So that is something to consider. And likewise, if you're choosing to do the braid technique, you'll also really want to think about that. The most important parts to curl are around the face and around the hairline and at the top of the head, because that's going to be the most visible when you pull the hair up or if you leave it down. This is one of my books from cosmetology school. There's some really helpful things in here that are meant for human hair but apply to doll hair too. So you can see, like, you usually want your section to be the size of whatever roller you're using. So you can see, like, this person's holding the roller on the hair and figuring out how to separate it. And you'll want to alternate, so you'll want to wrap some this way and then the next one wrap facing it so that they don't combine and become one big ringlet. That can happen. Now for a fashion doll that's much smaller, you can use straws or even pipe cleaners to do their hair. It's especially handy if you're recurling their bangs. So I'm going to take my end paper, I'm going to slide it down, and you can also hold it the vertical way for longer hair like Lainey, because she's going to have more bits that kind of hang out. And then I'm not going to space this out too much because I want this to be a wave. And I'm not going to roll up too high, because again, she's supposed to have kind of loosish waves. So I don't want to go all the way to the scalp, because if you look at her in the factory, she has kind of like a flatter scalp with big loose waves at the bottom. And something important too to note is that you want to think of how the curls are going to sit. So around the face, you don't want to wrap towards the face, you want to wrap away from the face. And if the end papers are kind of drying out, you can spray them with a spray bottle so they stick better. And you want to try to keep like your hair clumped together pretty nicely and tightly. You don't want it to be messy. That's really important. If it goes on all bumpy, you're not going to get a nice result. So again, I'm going to kind of section the top away from the bottom. And you want to make sure you comb each section out. And you can also vary the curl size if you want to. So like I have one of these big blue rollers, and you want to make sure the ends are tucked in. So I'm going to do the sections around kind of her face pointing away, but then I'm going to switch directions at some point.
But this is not a process you want to rush. I took out some of my rollers several times and redid them because you want everything to be smooth and tight. You want to make sure that you're combing every section out like I said. You want to make sure all those little stray bits are in the end papers, and you also want to make sure that the end paper edges that don't have hair in them are like pointing up the curler, not down around where the band goes, because it'll get all like wrinkled and bumpy, and then it won't lay the curler as flat. So you'll have to figure out how to position it depending on which direction you're spinning, and it just takes a lot of practice. This is not something that comes super easily. You're gonna have to do it a lot of different times and learn how to finesse it to get just the kind of curl you want.
So Lainey is all set with the rollers. I did readjust them a few times. Now there's gonna be some little sticky bits that come out. That's just the nature of like this particular hair type. If you were dealing with, say, Saran, it would sit nicer. So I am going to boil wash her hair, but I'm going to take the rollers out right away because again I want these to be loose waves. If you were going to do corkscrew curls like what Cecile has, you would want to probably leave these in to dry and then take them out. So if you're going for a looser look, whether you're braiding the hair or you're using rollers, take them out, and it helps too to kind of like brush through them sometimes. Now I heated up some boiling water. I kind of let it sit out for a minute just because I didn't want it super windy. And I'm gonna try not to like touch the upper parts of her hair that aren't curled, so like what's up by the root. I'm just gonna try to dunk the actual rollers. Now if you use bobby pins or like these perm rods, sometimes the little like elastics or the bobby pins leave crimpy marks. Yeah, if you find that's happening a lot, then maybe take them out and smooth through those areas. So I'm just gonna dunk her. And this is Kanekalon hair, so even when I went back and redid some of the rollers I wasn't happy with, her hair was already starting to like wave even though it wasn't completely dry. You don't need to like let them soak in the hot water. You can kind of just like dunk it, or you can hold the doll and pour the water over it. But if it's saran hair or nylon hair, you will definitely want to leave them to sit in the water longer because that's a more temperamental hair thing. So you can see how there's like this little bump here, which we don't want. So I'm going to unwind her hair. Then I'm going to take the brush and I'm going to kind of coax it in the way that I want. And for any parts that are kind of bumpy, if you just take some hot water, you will be able to smooth them out. So that's one of the reasons why I like to kind of take it out, so I can get a really good assessment of what needs to be done. And those little sticky bits I can combine. Those like little pieces that were sticking out.
I personally really like taking out the hair when it's wet because I feel like I have more control over the finished product, and I can really assess if I missed a spot, if something needs to be recurled, if I need to get rid of any bumps in the hair from the bands or bobby pins. So I spend a lot of time during this process. Now, that's not to say that you might not have to go back and do further touch-ups, which I did, but I am also a perfectionist when it comes to curly doll hair, which is why I don't do it all that often, because I just have a very, very high standard for how I want it to look.
Moved my hot water bowl into the sink here. Now this isn't like super piping hot, but it is still really warm and it can set the style. Now like I said, she had a few bumpies that I was having trouble combing out, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to like hold the crown of her head and dunk that, making sure not to get any of the curls. And then I'm going to take my comb, my fine tooth comb, not my brush, and I'm going to smooth just the top of her scalp. Now I'm going to leave her curls defined like this for now, but when she's dry I can brush them and they'll kind of blend a bit more together, so it creates a slightly less defined look. And I'm going to rinse her in cool water to kind of set everything, that her little bangs are sitting where I want them to. And you can see all those bits that were sticking out from the curlers, since I took the time to brush through each ringlet and retwist it, they've combined. So I personally recommend taking out the rollers, especially for American girl hair, because it sets very, very easily, even if you were doing corkscrews on Cecile. That way you can just make sure that there's no bumps, because you don't want to have to go back and like touch things up once the doll is dry. So then you're going to take a generous amount of diluted gel and you're going to coat everything. Now I'm not going to comb this through like I normally would. I'm just going to kind of squeeze out some of the excess. Now something else to note is that if you are trying to fix the curls but not redo them, like you don't want to go through the whole process, what I did with my Cecile is what you saw me doing once I took the rollers out. I would take each ringlet, I would brush through it, fine tooth comb through it, and then twist it in the way that it wants to go and coat it in gel. And if you were doing if you weren't going to boil wash it, if you were just going to let it air dry in the curlers, then what you can do is you could put some actual gel onto the wet hair, and that'll kind of dilute it, and then you can roll it so it's like really shiny. But I'm going to be brushing through her hair, so I don't want anything too crunchy, and then I'm going to set her to air dry. So like I said in the beginning, I don't want her hair to be like ringlets like what it is now. Excuse that it's a little bit unkempt. I had to go back in and show how I sectioned her hair, so it kind of made a bit of a mess of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my wire wig brush and I'm going to brush all of these curls out.
So Lainey's hair had not been in the best condition when I got her, so parts of it were really nice after I brushed it out, but parts of it weren't. It kind of became a bit frizzy, but there is a way to troubleshoot this, which you will see.
Parts of Lainey's hair after brushing it out are really nice, but other parts of it are fuzzier, and that's just because her hair was pretty damaged when I got it, and this kind of Kanekalon hair, or just Kanekalon hair in general, it tends to be very dry, which is why I use a lot of gel on these hair types, whereas if you were to brush out saran hair like this, it would most likely look fine. And I didn't want to keep it in these perfect little ringlets because that was just not the look I was going for, because it's kind of annoying to maintain it like this, which is why Cecile lives in the cabinet. So what I'm going to do, and this is kind of like my hack, when you want like to brush out the curls, if it looks poopy like Lainey's hair, get it wet and then condition it. Put a lot of conditioner in it, and I am going to comb it through, well, brush it through, and then I'm going to rinse it out. And if I still feel like it's a little bit puffier than I want, I will heat up some water and I will just brush the hot water through just to kind of soften the whole look up. I mean, it would be nice if it all was like this, but that's just not how her hair is going to be. I am going to condition Lainey. It's a shame that all of her curls aren't as nice as the ones in the front, but that's just not how it is. So this is my trick. When you want to have it kind of brushed out and wavy, this really helps. This also is a good thing to do if you have dolls with wavy hair that just came this way, and like American girls, and you can't boil wash them straight, but their curls are still pretty defined. You just condition them really well. So I'm going to use kind of an excessive amount, and I'm going to concentrate on the areas that are really kind of dry.
Now I'm using my wig brush because I'm trying to get her curls to combine, but you could also use a fine tooth comb for this process if you want, like say you were doing this on a fashion doll. But this was a trick I used to use when I curled my Esmeralda doll's hair on display. I would always wet it and brush conditioner through it afterwards.
Okay, now that I have brushed the conditioner through and rinsed it out, I'm going to put more gel on her, but also I have this, it's a heat protectant actually, in the form of a leave-in conditioner. Now, I've been using this to crimp dolls, and it just leaves a super glossy finish, and it keeps the crimps together really well. And I've tried this a few times on like dolls with wavy hair or just really cantankerous hair, and this works super well, so I don't want to go too heavy on it. We're going to start with that much. I'm going to rub it between my hands and pull it through. Because I'm not rinsing this out, I'm going to kind of use this as almost like a bit of a gel.
I'm also adding more gel to her hair as well for a little extra shine and hold.
I have also decided to heat up another bowl of hot water, and I'm not dunking her, I'm just getting my brush wet and combing it through because I feel like it's her ends that are a little bit on the frizzy side.
I'm a perfectionist, so that's why I'm doing a lot of extra steps after this, but for some people, not doing these steps wouldn't have been a big deal. I'm also trimming her hair because she had really dry ends, and I felt like that was kind of causing the problem. It was just the very ends that were still looking fuzzy and kind of taking away from the rest of the hair, but I literally just skimmed the edges. I wasn't taking off even like a quarter of an inch.
So this is just me being really particular, but Lainey still has a few little bumps like right here from where the elastic band on the perm rod was. Now you can get like little marks like that from the elastic bands on perm rods, but also from bobby pins if you use bobby pins. So I'm just taking my flat iron on the lowest setting, and I'm going over these areas. I already tried doing it with hot water, but I think it's just where it is, it's really hard to to get it in the hot water without getting the bottom part in as well. We don't want that. So I'm literally just picking up sections, combing them out, seeing where the little bumps are that I don't like. And I'm not clamping really tight. I'm not like doing what I normally do, which is clamping and pulling really hard. I'm just lightly touching.
Note that the hair is damp while I'm flat ironing, and it's on the lowest setting. If you're going to use hot tools on your dolls, their hair has to be damp, and you have to be careful of what heat setting you use or it will burn.
So after a lot of prodding and finessing, she's finally sitting to dry, and you can already tell that her hair is so much calmer, but the ringlets aren't as defined. And the cool thing about this sort of hairdo is that you can change how it looks. Like I kind of spun hers so it still has somewhat of a ringlet, but I could flip it all so it kind of flipped out, or I could turn it under. But I personally like this look on Lainey. So they're slightly bigger waves than they were before I brushed it out. And I did redo one of the ringlets over here because as I was touching up those little bumps from the perm rod bands, I went a little too far down and it kind of straightened out that piece. So I just decided to redo it, but I'm actually happier with how it looks now. So Lainey is all dry, and I just want to show you that her hair can actually be brushed through now without it getting all frizzy. So this is what I mean about you can kind of coax it to do what you want. If you use your thumb, you could make it more flippy. And I think honestly that trim really made a difference. So if your doll is kind of like how my Lainey looked, which she was pretty trashed when I got her, you'll probably want to just trim the hair before you curl it to save yourself the aggravation, because it was mostly her very ends, and in certain sections, like she had a lot of matting like in this crown area, and that's where all of the dry bits were.
For me, it was very important that I was able to brush through her final results, because when she's getting dressed or, being moved around, used for photos, her hair is not going to stay pristine, so I wanted to be able to brush through it and make it look nice again without having to go through all the aggravation of redoing the curls. I also want to say you can technically use a curling iron. I don't recommend it. I don't have a lot of experience because mine is a professional one that gets super hot and would easily burn doll hair, but if you do it with the right products and keeping it wet, it might work.
And when I curled her hair, I did basically a row on top and a row on bottom, but I did them in vertical sections, and I basically combined her curls, the top and bottom, so they're more like large waves, because like I said, I didn't want super tiny defined curls. You can also do pin curls on your dolls if you want. It really doesn't work on a doll small scale, but say on an American girl, you can definitely do like what this photo shows, where it's a thin section that you literally like roll up yourself and then you clip. And the nice thing about the clip method, like whether you're doing a roller set or pin curls, is that clips don't leave the same indentations that bobby pins and rubber bands can sometimes leave. A little tip: if you're going to use straws to curl the hair in bobby pins, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to put the bumpy part, so this part with the ridges of the bobby pin, inside the straw. You'll want the smooth part on the hair, because the bumpy part with the ridges is going to leave more marks in the doll's hair. So I found I had better luck using the smooth part of the bobby pin instead. And also, if you're going to use straw rollers, you can save them. You don't need to throw them out. These are very old. I've had these for probably close to 10 years. And this is an example of what the braiding technique will yield. So this is my childhood dancing Esmeralda, and I rebrooted her, and so all this texture I put in, so it's been years. I rebrooted her 6 or 7 years ago, so it's not as defined as it once was, but I just did a series of little braids around her head, and then I didn't want her ends to be stick straight, so I just took straws and I rolled the very ends of her hair so they also were, wavy. But you can see that this is very different than Lainey's texture. It's a lot more like natural and beachy, and depending on the size of the braid, you can make a very kinky kind of curl, or you can do a bit looser like what I did for Ez. I also did her bangs that way. So if you're rerooting a doll and you want to put bangs in, you'll definitely want the hair to be longer than where the bangs are going to sit, because you're going to need enough to curl. So just keep that in mind. And I'm going to mock how you can use a pipe cleaner to do your doll's hair. So you'll want an end paper, but I'm not going to bother with one because I'm not actually going to curl Jade's hair. But you want to comb your section, and obviously you'll want the hair to be damp, and then you can either use 2 pipe cleaners or 1 folded over. And then you're going to get to the end of the hair and start rolling it up. And then you just twist it in place. See? Obviously this is a very large pipe cleaner that I'm using to demo, but that is a really handy way to get nice curls on your doll, and you don't need special rollers. Obviously on an American girl, the pipe cleaner would be probably too small, but it's great for fashion dolls. And the nice thing is, because these pipe cleaners are so soft, they're a lot easier to put in the boiling water and kind of move around and manipulate, as opposed to the big clunky rollers. And like I said, you can definitely use a variety of different size things to curl to create more dimension in your hair. You don't have to use all a uniform size. You could use slightly bigger ones, slightly smaller ones. That's going to be a lot of fun and give a very unique look. And this is what Lainey's hair looks like all finished. It's very shiny and smooth. Her ends look pretty good. Her hair has a lot of bounce and shine to it, a lot of life, whereas it didn't before. And this is what it looks like from the front. You can see it like pulls away from her face nicely. So when I pull her curls forward, they move away from her face rather than pulling into it and, blocking out her gorgeous features. This is not Lainey's finished result. I do have a transformation video on her in the works. She's going to be getting her ears pierced and some other handmade accessories, and I also have some clothes coming for her that I ordered online. And if you want to know the story behind how I got Lainey, then wait for that video. And until next time, love your dolls, love yourself, and live your life.